Ladies and gentlemen,
They say the next big thing is here.
the Steve Warneke Show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the program. I am Steve Warneke. Thanks very much for being with us. Articles, podcasts, and more over at stevewarneke.com. This is our weekly podcast. You are author of From Boy to Blue, and we are technically savvy over here also because we're doing something new tonight. We're doing our first over-the-air guest on the Steve Warneke Show. He was, without a doubt, one of Denver's finest police officers. We had the good fortune to work together during my time at the Denver Police Department. Dustin Duff, welcome to the Steve Warneke Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we both, we knew each other when we worked at the Denver Police Department. I think we had a mutual respect for each other, but we've both done something really unique. And since that point, I think we've become really good friends because we ventured out. We did what everybody told us we wouldn't do, left the police department, and we're both doing something completely and totally different.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's some weeks to say that we're good friends. I think there's weeks I talk to you more than my wife. So I think we are pretty good friends now.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've been a good source of support for each other. I think it's also very important when you leave the police department because it's such an adjustment back into regular society. So tell everybody what you are doing now.
I got into real estate full time, surprisingly. I was looking for something that I could coach football on. I coach high school football now. So I was looking at that and I was thinking about being a teacher. And I said, well, I don't really want to deal with all the politics of the police department and make less money. So I decided I'd go into real estate.
Well, listen, Dustin's going to be humble. Dustin works for Remax Momentum. He's in the Denver area. He absolutely killed it since he's left You're killing it. Like,
oh, thanks.
You're really good. You're really driven. This guy gets up at 4:30 in the morning. He works all day. He's got a second job, coaching kids, which could be a full-time job in and of itself. And so, but it does. I like to point that out for a couple reasons. Number one, I think you're a really hard worker, and you always have been.
Oh, thanks, brother. Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
But number two, it shows the character and caliber of people that typically become police officers. And we left. So let me tell everybody what I'm doing now in case you're new to the podcast. I started in real estate, but I couldn't see Dustin anymore through the smoke behind his trails. So So I published a book about my time on the police department. It's a memoir. It's called From Boy to Blue. It's available on Amazon. And as part of my effort to fight the war on cops, I've been releasing weekly articles and podcasts over at stevewarneke.com. So we've both been active since our departure.
Which is a phenomenal book. If you have not read it, anybody that's listening to this podcast, it's a must read, 100%.
Well, thanks. Now, I got a message this week from somebody. They asked for anonymity. Said I don't want to be into too many specifics about it, but this was a former police officer who had left the job, and this person was asking if I had had any experience with anxiety or fear since leaving the job. I talked about this in a couple podcasts that I've done previous. And even when I had Brandon Morales on once when he was out here visiting me, and we sort of touched on this also. But I definitely noticed an anxiety. I don't know if it's a fear, but an anxiety or paranoia that carried over. And this is, I notice it when I'm traveling. From all the years working the bars in lower downtown. Off duty where I would stand there in uniform for hours at a time. If I go to a busy bar where lots of people are drinking, I feel the paranoia. I end up standing up against, with my back against the wall. I don't want to get too drunk. I'm nervous about fights. And so it's definitely something that has carried over for me that I've had to work with. Really, I'm in therapy, always have been. My mom put me in therapy when I was 5 and my parents got divorced, right? But I've just always been a big believer in it. So I've done that, but it's been an adjustment. And so I'm wondering what your experience is once you left the department. Did you experience any of that? And if so, how?
Yeah, crowded areas, man. Like, you're so used to having a gun on you all the time and all that stuff that you're like, people have a 3-foot bubble. And I know probably my hands are going to go off the screen here, but everybody else has a 3-foot bubble. Cops seem to want to have a 5 to 10 foot bubble. They don't really want people around them. So, there's actually an interesting story. This is actually when I was still a cop, talking about anxiety. The person that wrote you, I totally get where she's coming from, because we had a bachelor party at Shotgun Willie's one time for a good friend of mine. He's home from the military, and I literally had to leave because I had a panic attack in the middle of Shotgun Willie's with gangsters and everything around me. So I get where she's coming from, or
Well,
he. Sorry, I don't know.
and what happened? I mean, did you sense danger? Were the people in the strip club getting unruly, or was it just something from an instance you'd been in before? Or can you pinpoint it?
I don't know. Probably the alcohol probably had something to do with it. But I started looking around, and there was a gangster here, a gangster there, a gangster here, and then of course your mind starts to run, because that's what our minds do. And you're thinking, oh, that guy might have a gun, or that guy might have something, or and you're just kind of like all over the place. And at some point, it's like point break, and you're like, all right, I'm out. I gotta leave.
Police make jokes about having to sit with their back to the corner. Are you able to go to a restaurant now and put your back to the door, or sit at the first table and not have your back, or not be facing the entryway?
Yeah, I've gotten past all that. I wasn't crazy about it, even when I was on the department, but it was definitely something that happened, and something that I took a little while. I've just noticed it actually last weekend, because we went to breakfast, and I was like, oh, we'll sit wherever, I don't care. But but yeah, before, I mean, if you had a gun on you, you did not want to be that guy in the front of the restaurant, because if that guy got that gun away from you, he has another weapon or whatever. So
How long do you think the transition took for you to get out of cop mode, if you have, and what percentage? How long have you been gone, and what percentage do you think you're out of it? 100%, 90%?
well, I mean, I retired in October, just after you left, I believe. But so it's been just over a year for me, and I've lost a lot of the stuff, but there's stuff some that you just can't turn off. Like, you look at some people, and you're like, that dude is up to no good. Like, period. You'd be driving along, and there's been a couple times where I've literally reached down to type a license plate number in, on somebody, because I looked in the car and saw these guys, and I'm like, I guarantee you they're dirty, So I still have every now and then, but it's very few and far between. More, I would probably say 6 months it took me to kind of start understanding that I'm not in that capacity anymore. So.
And I mean, what was your purpose in leaving the job? Why did you leave?
That job is tough. It's really, really hard on, your life and your personal life. And I was working graveyards and, doing that kind of thing. And I wanted to coach football, and there was things I couldn't do in my life. And a good friend of mine, his quote was always, live a life worth living and work a job worth working. Well, the live a life worth living part, I felt like I wasn't doing that. So I kind of wanted to just be normal. I was tired of being tired, is what I tell everybody.
So did it have to do with the department, or the job, or the people, or was it just, it sounds like it was just mostly the job is what you're describing.
Yeah, I mean, dude, going to the same houses over and over and over and over and over, and not getting that resolved, it just wears on you. You want to feel like you make an impact, but I mean, there's guys that I arrested probably 6 different times, and I'm not talking small charges, I'm talking felonies, and they're out. And you're just like, holy cow, man. And then it seems like, with the current climate out there, that police departments, instead of standing up and just saying, this is why we do these things, it was feeling like, we were always wrong no matter what we were doing. So I said, well, if I'm going to be wrong, I don't want to get suspended or whatever and be in trouble all the time.
I mean, so the fear of being in trouble or being splashed across a news screen did have something to do with your departure, or no?
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think for me, I really miss the job. I don't miss schedules bouncing around. I don't miss the overnights, graveyards, the swing shifts. But I do miss the job. I left personally because I just wanted to. I had things to say and do, and I couldn't do those things from where I was at the Denver Police Department. But I didn't really have a negative experience. But I did certainly. And do certainly think that the job of police work has changed a lot, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. And that did have a little bit to do with me leaving as well. But most of this had to do with my own personal ambitions. So I think we're both pretty driven people, and we wanted to, nowadays, especially, I mean, when my dad was growing up, you got one job and kept it, and now people have 2, 3 careers. So that's also a generational thing.
I do miss the guys and gals. You
Yeah,
you
yeah.
miss those. I mean, When you're in the dead of night, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's negative 10 degrees, and you're standing on a barricade, and your hands frozen to your gun, literally frozen to your gun. And those are the people that you build those really strong connections with. And I mean, you can never get past that. I mean, I still talk to guys every week. I think we talk about it all the time, how many people we actually talk to. But, those bonds, I mean, I'll miss those bonds all the time. That's why I try to make an effort to talk to them. But, as it was coming down, there was that old school mentality just doesn't work anymore. So.
I was surprised. I left and moved out of the state. Moved to Florida, and I was surprised how many people did keep in touch with me. And that I believe, is indicative or evidence of what you're speaking to. The fact that you just had a bond with these people, and they weren't. I'm going to be a part of their life forever. You know what I mean? And some of them I hear from more than others, but all of them we can pick up right where we left off. You know what I mean? So, and I still know I could call them if I needed anything. I still know they would do anything for me, to give me the shirt off their back, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, that's an amazing thing to have, really.
Yeah, and you and I aren't the only ones. I mean, there's guys we know. I mean, real good dudes that have left the job. A lot.
Yeah, there is
droves,
a lot. Do you think the police department taught you or trained you or gave you any personality traits or skills that you took away from the job that have been a really big help to you in your next endeavor of real estate?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that job literally encompasses everything you need for a workplace, right? I mean, think about it. We write reports, do all this stuff on computers. So maybe you're not computer savvy, but you know how to work that stuff. We're talking to people that are either drunk, high, or really mad every single night for 10 hours a night. We're talking to those kind of people, and I always tell everybody they have three options. Either you could go to jail, you can go to detox, or we can calm this whole situation down. Those are the only three options that we had on calls, So, so we had those, and then I guess to answer your question, the ability to talk to people and communicate is huge. It's huge, and then the confidence that you have to get when you are a cop. Otherwise, they'll eat you alive out there. The confidence is big too.
Yeah, I think confidence for sure, number one for me. I mean, I was a introverted, quiet guy who hadn't really been in an altercation in my life, and then pretty soon I'm forced to tell people to sit down and all kinds of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think confidence was a big thing for me, and to go into situations and know that I could handle it was big. But what about were you this driven and this motivated before the police department, or did the police department? Is that the reason you get up so early and you're so disciplined about exercise and your work and all of that?
I came from an athletic background, so I've always wanted to be the best, So, I would say I'm driven, but that when I got on with the police department, with the different levels that you can go up, throughout your career, obviously that amplified it because in my mind, I wanted to be a detective one day. I wanted to be a narc, or I wanted to do this. And, it took a lot of passion to try to get to those places.
Yeah. I mean, that's not something you can just wake up to, and you get turned down a bunch of times, and you got to pay your dues, and you have to do your reports right, and you have to do everything right along the way so that you can get accepted into those coveted positions, and you were able to do that.
Yeah, no. I feel like it played a part in it for sure, but the drive was inherent for the most part. I mean, built through my younger years, you got to get to college, you got to, go get that football scholarship, go do this, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I, did that. And, I always was fairly driven, but in that job, it's just magnified because it's all about your numbers, and it's always about, how good of a worker you are. So you want to make sure that you put that out there.
Yeah. So, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, but my question to you now is, like, police departments are hiring all across the country. There's literally article after article. I've seen incentives, job raises, sign-on bonuses. There is certainly, in today's climate, police departments are trying to entice good candidates. How are departments, and what can departments do you think, to attract good police candidates when they're facing what they're facing today?
Well, stop. I can't speak to everybody's hiring practices. All I can speak to is what I've heard from other cops that were on hiring boards and that kind of stuff. So, but I mean, let's just be honest. They're getting away from the A-type personality. They don't want the A-type personality because they feel like it's going to be a conflict, or they're going to be, get them in trouble, or they're going to generate lawsuits or whatever. So they're getting away from the A-type personality, and they're going to this personality of it's okay to show up late and take a report. So until you change that dynamic, until you stop saying, hey, you're not here to just go, take a report, until you do that, you can't really change your hiring practices, because those are the people that you're targeting,
Yeah, I mean, I had been on some years, and I definitely noticed a change. And I noticed that the alpha males were typically not selected. That the police departments had made their selection process, and I wrote articles about this at stevewarneke.com also, by the way. Exactly what you were saying, that they were finding passive candidates, and as a result, there was a video that we talked about on the website, where there was an officer just basically running around, running from a suspect, rather than confronting him.
God.
Yeah, did you see that one?
Oh, geez. Yeah. That was one of those ones that it's almost like a train wreck. You just got to keep watching just to see how it ends.
Yeah, and now here cops are expected to wear body cameras everywhere they go. Were you? Because I was there at the beginning of them, but I was in public relations there at the end, so I didn't actually have to wear them. Were you at any point having to strap on a body cam?
I missed it by 4 months, baby.
I mean, what does that message say? I mean, I said this at the beginning. Body cams are going to be good for the cops 99% of the time, and 1% of the time they're gonna hurt the cops. And the study just came out recently, the first of its kind from the DC police, that pretty much said that body cameras did not affect use of force. We did a podcast and article about this also, but so it really didn't have much of an effect. But I could have told you that from the beginning.
Right.
No.
Right. I mean, let's just be honest. They do serve a purpose, and I've said this from the beginning. Now, would I want to wear one out on patrol every day? No, I don't. I just don't want to. But mine's more of a pride issue, right? I'm a grown adult. You gave me a gun and a badge to go do a job, but you don't trust me enough, so you have to put Big Daddy on my shoulder, to watch every little thing that I do throughout my day. But yet I get to carry a gun and badge around all day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was twofold. I mean, number one, I'm going out, and men and women are going out every day doing heroic acts, stepping in the line of danger for complete strangers, and the reward for them is like, yeah, put this camera on. We think you're full of shit. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a slap in the face of the people that are doing the job. Also, they know that they're doing a good job. And then I posed this question when I did the DC police article to the readers at stevewarneke.com. I said, it doesn't matter what job you're doing, nobody would want to be wearing a body camera all day at work. It doesn't really matter what your job is. Nobody would love that.
Yeah. And I tell everybody, like, I know this all came about from things that have happened and incidents that have happened across the country. That's where this whole uproar came from. But, and like I said, I acknowledge the fact that there is a place and a time and a place for them. But like you said, you gave me a gun and a badge to go do a job. Just let me do my job. Just let me go out there and do my job,
Yeah. So how are the officers that are being hired today, how are they going to deal with today's climate, with the war on cops, with the threat of being splashed across the news, with the body cameras, with the disrespect, with, all of the things that go on? How do you think is the average career span of a police officer just going to get shorter, or is this generation going to be more tolerant and they'll just be bigger punching bags and they'll take it for longer? Or how do you think they're going to deal with it?
More turnover. There'll be so much turnover in this, and it's not. It's a generational thing a little bit too. I mean, look at me. I did the job for 10 years and then I left to go do something else. I'm not above that, obviously, but when you have passive people in a job that's required by basically A-type personalities to take controls of situation, like you said, and you put them in a critical incident, or you put them in a life or death situation, the trauma that gets caused on those types of people versus an A-type personality that looks at it like a challenge, it's going to break a lot of people, and that's where you're going to get your turnover from.
Well, and I do think, and I was one of these people, I think from our past conversations you were not, but from the time I was 5 years old, the only thing I ever wanted to be was a cop. And I still think, I just met a lady the other day who bought my book and was talking to me. She said, oh, this is for my son. He's 10. He's just wanted to be a cop since I can remember, and he's just hell-bent on it. And I think, God or the universe or somebody, there are still people being born that have a calling to do this job. And so we'll still see them continue to serve. But I don't know for how long, because as you were saying, like, I don't know if you could do this for 30 years in today's climate, which is a real shame because the citizens and the community and Americans suffer because they're losing good people out there doing an amazing job because of an inaccurate climate that's being described by the media and this war on cops.
Yeah, false narrative. Um, yeah, I just think you're going to continue to see those turnover rates increase over time. And I feel bad for these people now. I mean, not only do they have the stress of out on the street, they have the stress of I'm not going to get back by my own department in a lot of cases. So we've already it's public knowledge about the heart attack rate, stroke rates and health issues and all that stuff with cops. I mean, it'll be amazing to see 10 years down the road from now what this extra added stress on top of that, not feeling like you're the only person in the world, right? That you're the only one that has your own back. That's it, because nobody's going to go to bat for you, and what the health risk that's going to cause down the line too.
Yeah. We're here with Dustin Duff. I worked with him at the Denver Police Department. Duff's off doing real estate for Remax Momentum in Denver. I am Steve Warneke. This is the Steve Warneke Show. A couple other things, Dustin. If you had to describe the job, the good times, what would you say about the good times on the police department?
Oh man, well, there's some that I'm not going to tell on here, but that's another thing, man. Is I don't know about you, but the sick personality that you develop to try to cope with things on that job, like that's something I haven't been able to shake. Like I still laugh at some weird things that people kind of look at you and they're like, what do you think that's funny for? But the reason why I say that is because, what we're referring to is some, and you see everything, right? I mean, you see everything from a naked guy running down the street because he's high on whatever.
Yeah.
And he's literally just wants to run. That's it. You stop him and you're like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I just want to go for a midnight run. You're like, wait a minute, dude. Like, you can't just be running around butt naked in the middle of the street in downtown Denver, so. But
I talk a lot about that in my book, The Desensitization, and when you see time after time people shot and heads blown apart, people burned and stabbed and gutted, and also, and that the first couple times it was pretty traumatic, but it doesn't take long before you're discussing where you're going to eat over the body of somebody that's been killed, because that's what you have to do in order to function. So I mean, I agree with you, but cops typically have a dark sense of humor.
right.
But I would say, like, I thought it was one of the greatest jobs ever, is where I was, for me. I mean, just being out with this group of people that you were so close with, and being out in the, on the town and in the cars, and oh man, I mean, there was a lot to that. That was, I will always look back on fondly.
Oh no, man. I mean, you can't buy those experiences. You can't buy the things that you did there. And even though I was talking about, the people getting out of jail early and all that, but the satisfaction of knowing that you brought justice to somebody was huge, right? Like, you look at a domestic violence victim in the face and she's, just beside herself, but you're able to go catch that dude and put him in jail for the night. You can actually feel good about yourself.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. There's no feeling like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, no, that job was huge, and it had so many different avenues, man. It just affects you in so many different ways. It is its own personality. That's it.
And lastly, do you have any advice for cops that are nearing the end of what they can take, or their careers, that are going to transition into the private sector? I mean, what bit of advice would you offer to police officers that are going to leave?
Stay busy. Stay busy, right? You're not regimented anymore. I mean, some jobs, I guess you would be still. There's still jobs out there. But let's just take what I'm doing, for example. I own my own business essentially, and I mean, you're so regimented with the police department. It's you wake up now, you drive to the station, get dressed, you're in roll call by this time, you're out to wherever at this time, and you know what I mean? All night long is basically structured. And when you go into the civilian world, it's not as demanding, I guess, to say the least. So, stay busy, find things that, that interest you, find things that you want to do. I mean, if you get an idea, go try it. Go try it. What's the worst that's going to happen? You don't have a department that's going to fire you now because you started your own business, So I mean, my biggest thing would be just, stay busy with it, and don't look back. Just take the things that you got from it and use everything that you learned. I mean, some of the things, you'll never get rid of the nightmares, but I tell everybody this, I said, but I got way more good things from the job than I do negative things, so I use all those to my advantage. So that would be my main advice to you.
I guess if I had to give advice, it would be get therapy. No, I just
you're
think
trying to talk me into it, right?
well, I just think it's helpful to talk to somebody. Well, who else are you going to tell this stuff to? No, but I mean, to get, to really let it go. I mean, but it's tougher for me because I'm writing about police stuff and I'm doing the podcast and stuff, so I'm still kind of engrossed in it. But but there's such a freedom about waking up every day, setting my own schedule. There's a lot of things about the police department where if you had an hour left, you can't leave. And you had nothing to do or something. You just end up sitting there like you're ironically in jail, right?
Right.
And now it's like, well, I'm done with my work, so I'm gonna go play tennis or whatever. To be able to set my own schedule has been the most rewarding. But I mean, it's a hard transition to make. I think you should talk to your loved ones about it, and make sure you keep in touch get some friends outside of the department.
Yeah,
definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And just for anybody that listens to this podcast, if you're going through that, you guys call me. I don't care. Call me. We'll chat. If you're having a rough time with it, guys that have left the job already or people that are thinking about leaving the job, I'm always happy to talk to anybody because it's not easy. It's not easy. That was your life for a period of time. Yeah. And so you based everything around this one thing for how long, and then you decide you want to leave. So, it definitely, I agree with you. Talk to somebody that's done it. Talk to somebody that, has some knowledge in it.
And people can find your number if they Google your name because you're in the real estate business, right? So
right. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for your time. I enjoyed the visit and the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it. We'll be down at Florida to see you, so we'll have to maybe do a follow-up to this. If anybody has any questions or anything,
Absolutely.
Get those shipped in and we can do a follow-up to this.
Absolutely. You can contact me at stevewarneke.com. All right, Dustin Duff, thank you so much again for your time. I appreciate it. We'll see everybody else over at stevewarneke.com, podcast articles and more. Be sure to get your copy of From Boy to Blue. Everybody, thanks for being with us.